Welcome to this Photoshop project. My name is Peter Pohle with Steenberg Design. For this project we will create a fairy portrait, and the idea for this project came from a book that Derek Lear published on creative Photoshop projects for Focal Press. And I just want to give credit to him because that's a lot of the ideas on how to do that came from this book. Creating this tutorial I worked on a PC, so you would see little text boxes that will indicate whether the keyboard shortcuts are on the PC. In that case, they will be highlighted in a yellow color. If it's the Mac commands, they will be shown in a light green color. You will also see that indications whether I'm going to use my left mouse button, middle mouse button, or right mouse button will also be shown highlighted in yellow. Otherwise, all of the important information, what kind of brush settings or detailed information, will be shown and explained in little text boxes. The face that I'm using is a stock image, and it's on a separate layer above a black background layer. I'm selecting both of the layers and I right mouse button click merge the layers. Then I want to make sure that the face is centered, so with the rulers visible on the side I'm going to add a guide to it, and the guides you get by dragging from the ruler to the center of the image, and they snap automatically to the center if the snapping tool is turned on. So the next thing is I make sure that I have black as my foreground color, choosing my brush, and I'm choosing a soft brush. Make sure that the hardness setting is set to soft, and I'm painting on the outside to cover all of that is what I don't need in the face up, which is basically all the white background. So the only thing that's going to be visible is the face, plus the ears, the earrings, and the neck. The next step is I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to choose Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And then at the new top layer, I'm going to add a layer mask to it, which is a white field on the right to it. You see that it is selected and it's highlighted by a border that is black and white. Make sure that the layer mask is selected. Then make sure that black is your foreground color. Then choose a bucket tool and click on the image, which then in that case will automatically fill the mask with black. In that case, then everything that is below that mask is hidden. Then make sure that your layer mask is still selected. Switch the foreground color to white, and when you paint with white it will reveal everything that is below that layer. So basically by switching between black and white, you're either gonna reveal painting with white or black covering up what is below that layer. It's basically the same as painting and erasing. But you're going to work the whole time just on the layer, and that is very important that you pay attention to that. Combining the two layers, I select all, choose Copy, Merge, and Paste into a new layer. Then I select the two old layers and group them into a folder, rename the folder, and put that at the bottom. Now we have a dark line running through the center of the face, which we need to retouch. So we will create a new layer using or choosing the stamp tool, setting the sample layers of our stamp tool to current and below. In the boxes you can find a little bit more clear information on how to use the stamp tool. But what I'm doing here is that I'm picking the color and pixel information from the area that is close to the center of the dark area that I want to retouch. Obviously I want to be a little bit lighter, and I'm going back and forth and frequently change my clone source so that I don't get a repetitive pattern. In the center where the nose is, you have to reduce the brush size and work more carefully. I also get rid of the highlight on the right side to keep it more only on the left side. And for a process like that you have to take a little bit more time. You just cannot rush that. You want to take as much time as possible to get it as nicely as you can. Under the nose I'm doing the same thing, and also remove some of the blemishes. And under the chin, or on the chin at the lower part, I also do the same thing. Keep your brush hardness settings between 50 to 80%. And you will see that I also zoom out of that image in order to see from a distance if there's any blemishes more visible and any unevenness. I merged the two layers, the layer that I did the cloning and retouching on with the layer below. And then I also decided to fill in the top area where the hair is with the black color so that it's completely covered. Being done with the retouching part of the face, I want to change the face and make it a little bit more narrow in the chin part. So I'm duplicating the layer. Choose the marquee tool in my tool palette and draw a marquee around the face. Press the Ctrl T or Command T key, which is the transform tool, and also turn on the warp mode in the top options panel, and pull the corners, the left bottom corner and the right bottom corner to the middle in order to warp or change or alter the face so that it's a little bit more narrow around the chin part. So being done with that, I'm also choosing right mouse button click to merge down the layer. I want to give the face a little bit more of a three-dimensional look, which means that parts of it will be out of focus. In order to do that, I duplicated the layer and I apply a blur filter to it under the filter panel, about a 5.0 pixels blur. Add a layer mask to it. Then I'm opening up the gradient tool and choose a black to white gradient. And in the gradient panel, there are at the bottom you have the left and right color stop, and I'm changing the right color stop from white to black. And at the top you will have the opacity stops, and I want them on the right side to be completely transparent. So I'm gonna get a gradient that goes from black to transparent, and I'm choosing a circular gradient. So in the layer mask, make sure that that is selected. I'm beginning to drag from the center out, as the red line indicates here, and I'm going to keep on dragging on the left and on the right, and it creates a circular gradient that is black to transparent, parts of it beginning to reveal the sharper image from below, whereas I'm going to make sure that the areas of the ears and other areas are going to be totally out of focus, which gives the impression that the whole image or the face or the portrait has a much more three-dimensional look. So the sharper areas of the eyes, the nose and the lips will come more forward, where other areas will appear a little bit out of focus. So I want to change the face to a color that has a more bluish tone. So I create a new layer on the top of the layer stack, and I change the blending mode of the layer to color. And I'm going to fill that layer with a turquoise bluish tone. Choose the bucket tool and click on the layer. And then make sure that I paint on the mask. I'm going to use a soft brush and play with the opacity settings. Keep it pretty low, so I'm not going to paint very strong right away. And then I'm going to warm up the whole areas of the mid-center of the face, mostly the nose, the cheek and the ears. If you apply the warm tones in that range of the face, then you will notice that even the face comes alive. So I'm going to add a little bit more reddish tone to the ears, to the nose, to the cheeks, a tiny bit to the forehead. Important to apply that also to the eyes and the eyelids, or the edge of the eyelids. So I'm going to reduce the brush size, make it a little bit harder on the outside so that it's not quite that soft. And basically painting in the masks, it reveals the warm tones of the face from the layer below. and especially on around the lips too, I'm painting in black in order to open up or reveal what's ever in the layer below. I like to create a little bit more variety in my face color-wise. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to change blending mode to overlay. And then I prefer painting a little bit more purple over the eyes, under the eyes. In overlay mode, you can actually really colorize the eyes any color that you like. I picked a more yellowish tone here. You can use green or red or whatever you like. And then on that particular eye, since I want the light to come a little bit from the left side, I added a highlight on the left side. Then I'm going back to the layer below that is set to a color blending mode with the turquoise color. Paint in the layer mask a little bit more black around the cheeks and the nose because I like to blend it up a little bit. At the end, I'm gonna put all of those layers in a folder. And with the right mouse button click, I'm going to choose a color to color code my layer folder. I open up another document which has an architectural ornament. I only select half of it or draw a selection around it, copy it, paste it into my original document, and with the transform tool, I'm going to reduce it. I lower the opacity of that layer so that I can see the face underneath. I'm going to scale it to the size that I want, or that I think is the best. And then I'm going to use the warp mode and stretch it in a way, so try to find the right areas how I wanted to stretch the ornament. I'm going to do it on the right side where it wraps around the face and make it a little bit more narrow, so that it gets the impression that it's going around the face to the ears. So when I'm done with it, I'm going to increase my opacity again. And I think that this particular image needs a little bit sharpening, so I'm opening the unsharp mask. Play with the settings a little bit to get the result that I really want or think is appropriate. Press OK, and then I'm going to open up the face folder again and copy my green color adjustment layer, put it on top of the ornament, delete the mask, and at this point you see that this blending mode is affecting all of the layers and I don't want that, so I'm holding down the Option key or Alt key between the layers and link it only to the layer of the ornament. On the top of that I also apply a curve adjustment layer, because I think it needs a little bit of a harder contrast. I select the 3 layers and then also color code those 3 layers. With the ornament layer selected, I'm adding a layer mask to that layer. We will be working on the layer mask. Then I choose the marquee tool, draw a marquee over the area that it's extending over the half of the face. Instead of deleting it, I'm filling it with black, since we are working on the mask layer, which is also fulfilling the same result by hiding that area. Then I'm choosing the brush tool, and I choose a hard round brush, but I'm lowering the hardness and the hardness slider to make it not quite as hard. I'm also playing with the opacity settings, and I'm beginning to paint on the mask with black in order to hide those areas that I don't want to show, which is then going to only show those areas of the ornament that I want to be visible. I'm switching back to the layer that's the turquoise color blending mode, and I'm painting directly on the layer with different colors, trying to match the color that is underneath in the face in order to bring the color closer to what's in the face color more. And I'm switching back and forth between the different colors, like a little bit more purplish blue around the eyes, green where I need it, and the warm around the nose and the cheek. And obviously use lower opacity settings for my brush. Then I'm going back to the mask and beginning to paint with black on the mask in order to hide more areas that I don't want to show with my ornament. And I'm often going back and forth, changing my opacity settings on my brush and play with the hardness settings. Those are the things that you need to experiment to get the results that you really want. I'm going to the bottom of the layer stack and add a bevel and emboss effects to my ornament layer. And you can see all of the settings here that I chose. The reason why I'm doing that is the ornament looks a little bit flat, but the bevel and emboss will add a little bit more depth to that ornament. So you can play with those settings, but I'm trying to match the direction of the light to similar with it for the face. And after I'm done this, I'm painting still on the mask. I'm using my brush tool and painting with black, but I'm making sure that my opacity setting is very low. It's approximately 15 to 17%. And when I paint around the edges, it will soften this edge and make the transition from the face to the shadow and the light areas a little bit softer and integrate the ornament a little bit closer to the face or the transition. So you can also see that I'm painting a little bit more into the detail, painting into the shadow areas especially to soften those around the flowers, around the edges, and that will then more smoothly and more gradually transition from the face into the ornament. So I feel like that the ornament is standing out a little bit too strong. So I'm opening up the bevel and emboss settings again, and I'm playing especially with the size, the softness, and the depth sliders in the bevel and emboss settings to find the solution that I like the best. And I'm also adjusting the curves layer on top to soften the contrast of the ornament. I'm hiding all of the other layers, and the only layers that I'm going to leave visible are the green layers with the ornament. Select all, choose copy merge, and paste the new layer on the very top. And I'm moving it around, holding down the Control key to match the exact position of the original layers. Turn the visibility off on the original layers. Choose a key tool to delete the axis of the half because there's some shadowing. Then I'm duplicating that layer. Choose Edit, Transform, and Flip Horizontal. In the duplicated layer, holding down the Control and the Shift key, I slide the ornament into position. Then I select both layers and merge them. Then I'm going to select the old original layers, close the group or the folder, and then we have our new ornament done. I open up another document with a new ornament that I found, and again the same thing. I'm going to select only half of it, copy and paste it into the original document. I'm turning on in the view menu the guides and lowering the opacity of my layer. I'm using the transform tool again to scale the ornament into the right size. Use the warp mode again to shape the object in the way I want it. On the outside of the object, or the crown here on the left side, close to the edge, I make it a little bit more narrow, that it has the appearance of getting or wrapping around the face. Right mouse button, click on the eye icon of the layers. I color code my layers again. On the bottom of the layer stack, I'm adding an empty layer to the top. I'm setting the blending mode of the layer to color. And with the bucket tool, I'm filling that color with the turquoise green. Holding down the Option or Alt key, I'm linking the layer to the crown layer. From the bottom of the layer stack, I'm choosing a curves adjustment layer, and again holding down the Alt or Option key, I'm linking that layer to the crown layer and then using the curves to adjust the contrast of the crown. With the crown, I'm adding a mask layer to my crown layer, and with the black colored brush, I'm again painting in the mask and cover up those areas of the crown that I don't want to show. And obviously, as you can see, I sped up the movie. In reality, I'm not working that fast. So all of that is not erased, but painted with black in the mask. Then I'm using the Select Marquee tool, select the center part of the face, make the guides visible first in order to snap it to the guides and delete it. The edge around the bottom of the crown is a little bit rough, so I'm setting the brush smoothing settings to 100%, which creates a lazy mouth effect and clean up as much as I can the curve there. And then, as you may not have seen it, but I'm adding a layer effects to it, and what I do is I copy the layer effects from the ornament above the face and I paste it into the crown layer. And I'm also applying the layer mask because I don't need it at that point anymore, so the layer mask will actually then delete whatever was painted black in the layer mask. I name it, and I'm actually duplicating that layer because in the next step I'm going to do some effects, but I want to keep a layer of my crown as a backup in case I'm messing up with the next step of painting. So I'm beginning to use the smudge tool. The instructions are on the left there, and pull out and drag out certain areas in order to give it a branchy look. I want to create kind of a forest on top of the crown. And I'm also switching to the eraser tool and set the settings to approximately 15 to 20% to cut out a few areas or erase a few areas. And since it has already a bevel and emboss effects applied to it, it also makes it quite three-dimensional looking and it gives a more depth to the whole design. So some of the branch is going to be twiggly, some of them going to be straight. And I'm switching back and forth between the smudge tool to pull out areas and areas with the eraser tool to cut into it. Then I'm using the Control-Shift-Alt or Command-Shift-Option command to select the crown and use Control-Shift-Alt or Command-Shift-Option to move the selection over to the left and flip it. And then merge it again, and then I'm coming in again in order to not make it too symmetrical, so I'm going to pull out different areas on the left or on the right so that it's a little bit more asymmetrical. I'm still switching between erasing and smudging or pulling out more branches, going back and forth, determining where I'm getting a little bit too even or having too much. If I have too much, then I switch to the eraser tool and erase some of those branches back out. I'm consistently doing that until I get to the point that I'm happy with my result. I'm adding a new empty layer to the top of the layer stack, and set the blending mode to overlay. Then I pick a dark brown tone, and I'm painting into the crevices of the crown in order to give it a little bit more three-dimensional depth. Bring out a few areas, push a few areas back. And I'm also beginning to paint with a little bit of a larger brush over some areas of the branches, make it a little bit more gray, the color that I'm choosing there, but painting over those parts of the branches that actually pushes some of the branches back into the background and produces a little bit more of a three-dimensional effect, so I create a little bit more of a depth effect that way. At this point I'm doing a little bit cleaning up, put my backed up crown layer into a folder and put it to the bottom. Then I select my face, the face ornament layer, duplicate it, and also put that as backup away. Since I like the effect of the smudge tool on my crown, I'm doing the same to my face ornament. I'm selecting my crown layer and all of the overlay and blend mode layers, put them in a group, name it. I took a little bit of time looking at my design and decided that I'm going to open up the folder again and do a little bit more retouching and erasing. Basically, again, using the smudge tool and the eraser tool to work on my crown. I felt like that there was a little bit too much on the sides. It was kind of taking away from the design, or I didn't like it. So I eliminated or deleted some of those or erased it, and then I touched up the bottom part. I wasn't quite happy with the area at the top of the crown there, right at top above the face. So I decided that the shadow of the face or the crown was not casting enough of a shadow on the face, so I was creating a new layer just below the crown folder, but above the face and the face ornament, and basically painting a little bit of a as a shadow in it, and I used the overlay blending mode for that layer. After that, a little bit more touching up, I wanted to add a few more of those hanging kind of Spanish moss type of on the branches. And also erasing some of the shadowing that I have at the top there, that it would come a little bit more forward. So the face needed a base, so I picked up another ornament that I brought in, and all the steps that I'm doing from here on are basically exactly the same what I did before, using the transform and the morph tool to put that object or the base into position, erasing, or using the mask to paint with black, and hiding parts of the base. And since that is sitting on top of the face, I had to actually erase that out in order, or mask that out in order to make it appear like that it's sitting behind the head. Then I'm using the smudge tool and the eraser tool, use the same layer effects setting that I copied from the crown layer and pasted those layer effects into the base tool or base layer. Did a little bit more of that smudging and pulling out and playing with the erase tool to bring that out. Then I added a color blend mode layer on top. Started with the green, but I thought I wanted to change the color a little bit and make it a little bit more neutral. So I'm having a slight transition from a brownish tone to a greenish tone toward the top. And paint it right on top of the color blend mode layer. Then I added a layer at the very top to paint a little bit of a shadow effect under the face, but there's a few areas where it didn't work that well, so I have to come back and work on that. Basically, a lot of it is going back and forth. I work in one area, then I'm going back and work in another area, adjust a lot of settings. Sometimes I play with the opacity settings of the layer, play a little bit of, again, erase some of that overlay blend mode. And I don't want to draw attention too much of the bottom, so I made the bottom a little bit darker so that the focal point will be closer to the face. And then I played with the shadow area and got a little bit too dark, so I'm erasing that back out, but that's basically it.